You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics this evening because we have as our guest State Rep Jim Durkin, who is in his 11th year as a state rep. He had a little time off for good behavior. He had 7 years from 1995 to 2002, and then Jim ran. He won the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate seat in 2002, running against Dick Durbin.
Durbin, with the K.
And in 2000,
with the B. I'm with the K.
And then he came back in 2006, was elected again to the State House, and has been to the present. We're taping this show on March 21, 2010. And this could be an historic day because as we're taping, there's what certainly President Obama calls an historic vote. That is a vote for Obamacare, the health care program put forth by the Democrats. And let's just start there. Is Obamacare going to pass on March 21st today?
Well,
Jim Durkin, you'll be seeing this, folks, probably a week or two later, and you'll know.
Sadly, I think it will pass based on what I see. It's happened over the last few days, and they have put everything they have into this this vote and getting their 216. I know they're worried about just having it at 216 because everyone then is basically every vote could be deemed the one that put them over the edge, over the top. So I think it's bad for the country. I think it's being forced down in the American people's throat, and ultimately it will be the demise of many Democrats next November.
And so is it going to be a perfect storm for the national GOP in 2010?
I think so, and I think there's a very good chance that the United States House of Representatives will go back to Republican control, and I know there will be some strong pickups in the U.S. Senate. I don't know if there will be enough to take the majority, but and a lot of it's going to be based on the vote that is taking place today. And Nancy Pelosi made the famous comment just a few days ago, we need to pass this so we can figure out what's in it. And quite frankly, even if there are things in there are very good, they are not going to be able to, over the next 6 months, convince the American people that this is actually good government, good policy, and a great way to move forward. When I look at 16,000 new IRS agents who are going to be hired to be specifically to investigate insurance companies and healthcare providers to make sure that they are compliant with the law, it scares me, and it should scare a lot of people.
What about on the state GOP? You expect a big year for the Illinois GOP?
I think we're going to do very well. In 1994, we saw that the whole nation moved considerably towards the Republican Party. Are we there yet with the same attitudes of 1994? I think we're getting close. But I do know in the Illinois House, where I serve in our Republican caucus, that we are projecting a good year. We've got some very good candidates. We're picking up new people in districts which we had no one who had filed earlier. So we're going to be extremely competitive. And it's a lot of it's going to be based on how the mood in the country is going to be. But I do know that we are going to win a lot of seats next November. Hopefully enough to put us over the top. It's going to be close, but I think we're going to do very well.
You won a lot of seats to put you over the top in the State House?
That's correct.
Do you expect a majority in 2010?
There's a possibility that could happen. I do know that if we pick up, basically we're talking 12 seats, we could do it. Again, a lot of it's going to be based on the mood of the country over the next 6 months, particularly as we get into this next election cycle. And right now, I think that there is a considerable amount of discontent with the public and on the way that the Democrats have run not only the state of Illinois, but also out of Washington. We are in a very difficult time in which people are losing jobs left and right. And the administration has spent the last year dedicated to healthcare as opposed to jobs. And to me, the priorities are off, and it is not, and people are they're gonna react to it.
But Jim, is the defining issue this year for the state GOP the tax issue, whether there will be a tax increase and whether that is something that just the Democrats will push?
I don't think we'll see a tax increase or a vote on it until next November. I don't believe there's enough support in the House of Representatives nor in the Senate to support Governor Quinn's 1% tax increase. And quite frankly, Mike Madigan nor John Cullerton want to put any of their members, particularly targets, on a vote which is going to be a tax increase. So my guess is that there will be basically a punt. There'll be a 6-month budget, kind of like a lights-on budget, and then a lot of the Heavy lifting will be done in November when there will be a number of lame duck legislators. That's when I think if there is a time when there will be a real vote on an income tax increase, it will be in the veto session next November, not now. Because I know that Mike Madigan is a student of history. He knows that the public is angry, and they've been running the state for 8 years, and they don't have anything to say that they've done that's really good.
And the Republican Party, the state GOP, says they will not support a tax increase. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate.
And they say you can get by this year without a tax increase, even though there's a $10 billion deficit.
Well, there's deficits. There, well,
Do you agree there's a $10 billion deficit?
Correct. I think that there is a roadmap to get there. There's going to be some tough decisions, mainly with reforming our state pension systems and also reforming Medicaid. Those are the biggest, heaviest weight upon the state budget. So pension reform is extremely, extremely important if we are going to make some significant inroads to balance our budget over time. But that's going to be the question of how Mike Madigan and John Cullerton want to deal with this issue. We're talking state employees, some 5 different systems whose members are many of them are part of labor unions that support the Democratic Party, particularly Mike Madigan and John Cullerton. And I'm not sure if they are embracing any major reforms with our pension system. But that is where we have to start. It's collapsing under its own weight, but there has to be significant reform in our state pensions and also with our Medicaid, because they do take up approximately $15 billion out of a $29 billion operating budget in the state. So we need to do something quick. We need to do the right thing, but there's going to be some tough love along the way.
So, I mean, the budget comes down to education, healthcare, pensions, and transportation, right?
That's probably a good way.
I mean, and healthcare, we're talking Medicaid, and also there's health and you could say HHS, Health and Human Services, right?
Correct.
So it's really education, health, and human services that's most of the budget, and the pensions, of course, are spread out throughout. And then there's transportation.
Medicaid's about $9 billion that the state pays on its Medicaid system every year. And we pay anywhere from $4 to $5 billion a year on our pension system. So that's a lot of money. And the fact is, we need to address those 2 issues right now because they are swallowing the most of the state money.
But short term, the Illinois Policy Institute says they've got an alternative budget, 2011 solutions, and that's the IllinoisPolicyInstitute.org. You can find them. It's a liberty, free market-oriented think tank. Does the Republican Party agree with them? You can get this budget done, and it would be better you can get it done without tax increases. And indeed, like the Illinois Policy Institute says, if you want to rejuvenate the economy, if you want to get this state working again, you really can't raise taxes. You can't raise the income tax. You have to look at realigning the budget in terms of spending. And you also have to talk about the kinds of reforms you're talking about with pension and health care.
Well, yeah.
You agree with that?
I agree with the concepts of what they have proposed. It's not unsimilar from what the Tribune has proposed a few weeks back. But before you even talk about raising taxes during the most difficult and challenging economic times in decades, we should do everything to reform government, reduce the cost of operations of state government before we even talk about an income tax increase. And that means a major, as I said earlier, reforms to our pension systems, our Medicaid system. We have to look at, going in and reviewing some of these contracts that were, executed under the Blagojevich administration. There'll be savings in there. There has to be a wholesale review of the state government, but I don't think it's ever been done. But, we have a couple proposals that we have been trying to move out of the legislature, very common sense ones. One's the concept called PAYGO, that if you're going to increase spending, you got to eliminate something in state government. That is sitting in the Rules Committee. We also have a 72-hour posting of a state budget online. That is sitting in the Rules Committee. Just basic transparency issues we can't even get a hearing from out of the Speaker. So I'm not optimistic that they are going to take some of those recommendations to heart. I think, again, as I said earlier, I expect that when we leave this spring, it's going to be a 6-month budget, and they will wait until November to see how the election results turn out. And if our nominee Bill Brady wins, they may just say, we're not going to touch it until you have it carry over to his administration. And said, you can deal with it, Mr. Brady. So, which would be fine. And I know Bill will accept the challenge, and I know we'll help him along with that.
And the challenge would be to cut rationally, because right now, I want you to decide. I'm not going to say it's rational or irrational, but Quinn has set up this program where he said you can go with this $3 billion tax increase, or you're going to suffer draconian, I think that's his word, something like that, cuts in education spending. That's the choice he set up. Republicans are saying that's a false choice. You agree with that? Right?
I agree, and I think that is this is part of the political process, because he knows that public education and also the parents and also the unions that are part of that public education system are the most vocal. And by basically telling them that unless you support my income tax increase, there'll be a terrible impact inside the classrooms. There's other places you can cut in state government as opposed to education. So, but that is where people are going to feel it the most, and he believes that that type of pressure from those individuals will convince some legislators who may not be very supportive of a tax increase to reconsider. So I don't believe that that is a good way of going about this budget.
And the Allen Policy Institute, and when they talk about cuts in spending, they're actually talking about bringing it back to 2003 levels, but their point is that it's not really dramatic in terms of, if you look at what the spending is per person, it might be something like $2,200 per person. You're bringing it down to maybe $2,000. I'm using it in round terms.
Well, I think
Is that a useful way of looking at it?
Well, I think that, I think we use that as the pre-Rod Blagojevich, period. Rod Blagojevich expanded state government considerably without backing it up with revenues, particularly on the health insurance side. But I believe that there could be some problems based on the money that has been given to the state of Illinois from the federal government under the stimulus program, which it may conflict with if we go back before 2007, from what I understand. So, but I think that, we have to reduce the size of state government. We have to freeze spending, and we should probably go back to the spending levels back in 4 or 5 years ago. And these are. Is it enough? Probably not. But it's going to be more than just that. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to do to get this state government under control. It's not going to be done overnight. We're talking at least a 2 to 3 year period where we're going to hopefully run have a balanced budget, one that the revenues meet the expenses, because it's not going that way right now. But the thing is, it also, we're talking even, more so on the pensions in the biggest areas in state government, and also the Medicaid.
All right, so long run, you have to reform pensions. In the short run, you can't have savings. I think Quinn actually agrees with you folks, the Republicans who want a 2-tier pension, and a number of Democrats
Absolutely.
do. And but he's saying as to future employees.
That's correct.
And that will save you money in the future. They come in and you have a 2-tier pension benefit system. He would have, I'm not sure, but I think he would have defined contributions instead of defined benefits. You agree with that?
I agree with it, but I don't think that is going to fly. I don't think that's going to pass having the 401k type of analysis or approach that you have in the public sector will make it the final cut in the pension reform.
This year?
This year.
But you think eventually, if you had additional Republicans elected, could you then?
Absolutely, I think so. There's no pensions left anywhere. There's no private pensions. Everything's a 401k. The only place where there's a pension is with state government. But there has to be a pushback in retirement age. There has to be perhaps, I think, increased contribution from those individuals going to start in the system. And right now there's a 3% cost of living increase that automatically goes to people who are enrolled in the system, and that's wrong. So just by over a 30-year period, if we have this 2-tiered system, which is going to not only push back the age of retirement, but also either reduces a COLA or eliminates it, we could save anywhere from $40 to $50 billion, and that goes a long way towards balancing out just the long-term pension debt.
That's not being proposed now by Quinn, is it?
Absolutely not.
Increasing the retirement age, right?
Well, we just did it with the legislature.
Legislatures,
and
but not-
also that, from what I understand, on Tuesday, the state Senate is going to make their proposals on how to deal with some of these pension systems. We'll wait to see how they do it, but I think that they're working with the unions on this, because I know the unions do not want to change anything dramatically with the public pension system, because those are their members, and it's kind of like a sacred cow within state government. So I don't believe at the end of the day they will go far enough to make substantial reforms with our pension systems. I think it'll be probably not unlike the way that they handled our campaign finance reforms, which was a half-baked proposal, which I didn't go far enough, and I think that they'll try to make some type of recommendations, but ones that are not going to get the job done and ultimately help the systems and balance them out in the long term.
So ultimately, you're saying you need to elect Republicans to the State House, to the State Senate, to bring around, if not a majority, at least a different composition, so you have more people who support these pension reforms.
Exactly.
Is that your point? I mean,
that's the point. I mean, unless you take back one of the chambers, you're not going to be able to have any good faith negotiations with Democrats, even if, assuming that, let's say the House goes to the Republicans, the Senate, it's going to be tough. I know they're going to pick up seats, but if they're split chambers, I think gives us finally some influence and also a seat at the table. We have not had a seat at the table for years.
But also if you pick up the governor's chair.
Exactly.
And you think you can do that with Bill Brady?
I think so. I think Bill can do it. I think this is going to be a good year for Republicans based on, we have a Blagojevich trial that's starting in this summer, and he will expose the dirty laundry of the Democratic Party. More so than it ever has been done before in a public arena. That's going to be in a federal courthouse. That is not going to help the Democrats in November. Alexei Giannoulis is having a very difficult time, and I think Mark Kirk is going to do quite well in November. We're going to see a lot of changes, in some of these seats, and I really think that Bill Brady has an opportunity, and I think an opportunity to win and also make the case, if he stays on point, about his role is to right the fiscal wrongs of Illinois, and everything's going to be about balancing the budget, making Illinois a competitive and a good state for employers, because we have gone in a different direction for so many years.
Senator Brady going to focus on the economic issues because he is a social conservative. You would agree, right?
So am I.
You're a social conservative.
I'm fairly conservative as well, but the fact is...
Do you think will that be an issue in the gubernatorial race?
I don't think so. I think people are going to look past that, and they are going to see who is the person that's going to help, keep my taxes down, who's going to be responsible with the state money, but also help people get back to work. And when you start throwing in some of the social issues, which I know that will happen, I think this election cycle are going to look past that. I really do.
I mean, there'll be a definite attempt by Quinn and his lieutenant governor candidate. We don't know who that'd be. As we tape this on March 21st, people are talking up the name Senator Susan Garrett, right, as the lieutenant governor nominee.
That's correct.
And they're saying right now Quinn's in trouble with women, notwithstanding some argue that because he's more socially liberal, Quinn, than Brady, he would be doing better. But right now, Brady's beating Quinn in several polls.
That's correct.
And he's doing that in significant part because he's doing better with women, right?
That's correct, yeah. And he's doing very well with independent voters as well,
right,
which is becoming a bigger part of the, the people who vote in these elections. There's more of a independent streak and independent growth in the independents.
And on abortion, Bill Brady's pro-life. You're pro-life.
That's correct.
Pat Quinn's Catholic, but he's pretty much he's pro-choice, right?
Yeah, the same high school, with the same Catholic high school as Pat Quinn.
Did you?
Yeah, that's great.
But he's pro-choice.
Pro-choice.
So people say, at least upstate, it's important to be pro-choice in terms of doing well with suburban women. Do you think is that a factor come the fall?
It's a factor, but it's not going to be as much of a factor as it had been in the past. This is about fiscal responsibility.
It's about jobs in the economy.
It's about jobs in the economy. That's the way it's always going to be. It's going to be like that between now and November.
You see any recovery in Illinois between now and November in terms of, the unemployment rate is right above 11%.
I don't see
nationally. It's about 10%.
There's no dedication out of Washington towards job creation, nor in Springfield with the Democratic Party. It is about passing, unfunded mandates upon the states, but also expanding the size of government, and particularly as we are sitting today, this massive, massive overhaul of our healthcare systems and health delivery in the United States, which is 1/6 of the economy. I don't believe that the public is going to accept what is going to be passed and which is going to be implemented out of them. There's going to be 4 years of taxes before the taxes will go up. The benefits will go up, after the next election for the president. So it was.
Are you surprised? Did Barack Obama, who you knew as a state senator,
yes, I do.
Did he take his eye off the ball here? Because he came in, everybody knew it was about the economy, it was about jobs, and he spent a year focusing on health care.
I think
big mistake on his part?
History is going to say that it was misguided.
Are you surprised, though?
I am surprised. Barack Obama's pretty bright guy, and he's got some pretty shrewd people working for him. And the fact is, when people right now their biggest concern is finding jobs, making sure they can stay in their home and that they won't be foreclosed on, that they can live within their means. People are forced to have to cut back in their homes because of the economy. And jobs is the most important thing that government should be focused on.
Yeah,
it should be the only thing that you should be focused on right now. They've spent a year in healthcare, and I think he's wasted a lot of political capital, and I think he's, unfortunately, a lot of his members are going to be thrown under the bus, and they're going to lose their elections in November because of this vote today.
And President Obama said, when he talked about the economy as he was running, he said you had to reform healthcare, you had to reform energy, you have to reform education. That was all important for the economy. Do you think is that an argument that still makes sense?
Well,
do you think it might come around that if the healthcare program, even though it doesn't kick in till later, somehow people investing in the economy will see this as a plus and the economy will start picking up? And
no, people are going to be taxed.
2010 might be a good year for the Democrats?
You're not going to see anything coming out of the health bill over anything that's going to assist someone who's had a problem with their, getting access to good health care over the next 4 years. People with pre-existing conditions right now, it won't be 4 years until they, assuming that they're still alive by then, But no, I think we'll be taxed to support this massive overhaul. You won't see any benefits, and quite frankly, nobody knows what's in this bill. Even Speaker Pelosi, as I said earlier, says we need to pass this bill to find out what's in it. It's all I do know, as I said earlier, there's going to be massive expansion of government, IRS agents, and other bureaucracies within the federal government to administer this program, which is not supported nor accepted by the majority of Americans.
I want to go back. Let's go back to the state issues long term, the things that have to be done for long-term reform, not just to get by with this budget 2011, but then the next few years. And when you talked, and we kind of glossed over this, but it's key, you talk about pension reform, and we talk about a two-tier pension system, lower benefits for new employees, keeping the benefits the same for current employees. That still doesn't change things dramatically. When you get the dramatic change, and it's being suggested by some, again, by the Illinois Policy Institute, perhaps by the Chicago Tribune, that you have to start talking about reform for current employees as to their pensions that have not accumulated yet for services they have not provided. People may say, under the Illinois Constitution, you cannot cut benefits for those employees who've already worked for benefits for the pension benefits for the portion of time they've already worked, but looking ahead. So if a person's been here as an Illinois government employee for 10 years, he's accumulated, in a sense, certain pension benefits. Those can't be cut. But going forward for the next 20 years, various people say that's consistent with the Constitution. You agree with that?
Well, that's going to be the debate. And right now, since the Republicans don't have the majority in either chamber, you will not see any type of pension reform that will have an effect upon the current individuals in the system. They believe
but if you got that majority, would you, and you're a lawyer, so would you test that? Would you feel comfortable pushing that legislation if you thought it was desirable? And it sounds like you do.
Yes,
and then test it and see whether the Illinois Supreme Court ended up approving that as constitutional?
I would support that. It's fair, and we've kind of protected ourselves with the way that I anticipate that it's going to go. It's debatable under the Constitution whether or not that's acceptable. But it would be a test if there was a bill passed which did affect the current members of the system. It would be a really fascinating exercise in our courts of whether or not you can, I wouldn't say retroactively, but apply some of these limitations or reforms on current people in the system. But I think it's fair. And
you would talk about changing the retirement age, right?
I'm not retiring at the age of 55.
Right.
I won't retire until 70.
So you would talk about doing that for state employees, right?
Sure. I think
that's where the big savings are long term. And
good for the goose should be good for the gander.
And you have $83 billion in unfunded liabilities for the state employees. So you got to do changes like that if you really want to have significant reforms.
I think that would it would save the state billions if it was to apply to all individuals who are currently employees of state government, including members of the General Assembly, if you played by those rules.
You're right. Let's go back over to the lieutenant governor. We mentioned that Garrett's being considered. On the Republican side, it's Jason Plummer.
That's correct.
Often people say in Illinois, elsewhere, people vote for the governor. They don't vote for the lieutenant governor. Do you think that's true, or might that be different this time around?
Maybe a little different this time, but I think it. There was a lot of emphasis on obviously the. We spent a lot of time with Ron Blagojevich about a year ago,
right.
and
so obviously that was a case in which the lieutenant governor, Pat Quinn, became governor.
Exactly.
But now you're talking about, so if it is Garrett, and it's Quinn Garrett, and it's Brady Plummer, Jason Plummer, young, energetic guy, but two downstaters from two upstaters. Is that a factor?
I think that I don't think it's going to have that much of an effect, and I would agree with your original thought that I think people are going to vote for the governor. The lieutenant governor is not going to be. There's a little more interest, but I don't think at the end of the day people are going to vote for the governor, the person who they think is going to be truthful and the most responsible person with the purse strings of Illinois.
But they may shape the tax message because, some people say Garrett's attractive to Quinn, in part because she's disagreed with him. She has not supported his tax increase in the past. Now, but she did say about a year ago on this program, people can watch that on youtube.com/Public Affairs TV. It was just about a year ago. And Quinn was announcing his tax increase then, which was somewhat similar to now. It was a 50% increase in income tax. But it was increasing taxes for people over $60,000. She seemed to be saying she wouldn't support that, it should be higher, but it wasn't clear, as we said in the program, whether she'd support it if they raised taxes on people above $100,000, above $150,000. But clearly there's a point where that would kick in. Jason Plummer's been pretty consistent with Brady. He does not support an increase in taxes.
That's correct.
So does that kind of reinforce each other as people are voting for Quinn and Garrett if she's the lieutenant governor nominee, and if it's Brady Plummer, they're voting on that tax issue?
Well, I think that people are going to look and they're going to see two Democrats. I mean, assuming that Susan Garrett does become the lieutenant governor for Pat Quinn, I would assume that she's going to be aligned with him on how we need to get out of the mess, meaning there has to be a tax increase. If there isn't, then that ticket's going to be in a lot of trouble. They have to be walking into this.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, State Rep Jim Durkin from Western Springs. He is in his 11th year.
That's correct.
Total it up as State Rep. He ran for the U.S. Senate in 2002, put up a tough campaign, won all the editorial boards, I think it would be safe to say, or most of them.
Most of them, that's correct. Couldn't win over the Washington Republicans, though.
Didn't have a lot of funding from coming out of the National Party, but he has been the state chairman for the McCain campaign in 2000, McCain campaign for 2008. So we kind of end on the same note as we started. This issue, as we look at the election of fall of 2010, it is the tax issue. Democrats are aligned with a tax increase, even though Speaker Mike Madigan isn't saying that he doesn't think that people want it, but their leaders, the governor, lieutenant governor, running Quinn and possibly Garrett, pushing for a tax increase. Bill Brady, Senator Bill Brady, and Jason Plummer, his lieutenant governor nominee, not a tax increase. That's the defining issue.
That's it. It's going to be about fiscal responsibility and who's going to have the courage to step up and make the tough decisions. It's not going to affect.
And by that you mean responsible cuts in spending.
Responsible cuts, and also defining what the role of state government is, which has been, it's a monstrosity that's grown over the last.
We didn't talk about it, but long-term reform in pensions and in health care and education, charter schools, school vouchers, all of that may come up in the fall campaign, right?
I think it should. I think that these issues are fair game.
School vouchers, school choice.
I support school vouchers. I support charter schools.